Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. Welcome back to Virgo. Uh, Distance doesn't just happen. It gets created, built, constructed brick by brick through choices both people make or don't make, words both say or don't say, moments both show up for or abandon. And blaming one person for distance that took two people to create. That's convenient. That's revision. That's rewriting history, where one person is villain who allowed distance and the other is victim who wanted closeness but got abandoned instead. Except relationships don't work that way. Distance doesn't work that way. Responsibility for disconnection never sits entirely with one person while the other remains blameless. So when someone says, you let the distance happen, you didn't fight for us, the question becomes, where were you? What were you doing? How were you showing up or not showing up that made fighting feel futile, made closeness feel impossible, made distance feel like only available option? Ribs feel too small, suddenly like chest is trying to expand against bone cage. I need you to come back to me. Present tense, current need, happening now, desire for return, for reversal, for undoing whatever separation exists. But needs don't obligate. Your needing someone doesn't create their responsibility to fulfill that need. Your wanting them back doesn't mean they should come back. Your feeling incomplete without them doesn't make their return necessary or healthy or right. Needs are just needs. Feelings are just feelings. Neither carries inherent rightness that demands other people rearrange their lives, their boundaries, their own needs to accommodate yours. And conflating need with entitlement, with deservingness, with someone owing you their return because you need it. That's where relationships break. That's where people suffocate under weight of being needed in ways that erase their own autonomy, their own choices, their own needs that might conflict with yours. So, yes, you need, you want, you feel incomplete, and simultaneously, that might not be reason enough for return, might not be compelling argument, might not be what the other person needs, wants, or chooses for themselves. Both can be true. Your need and their choice not to fulfill it. Neither negates the other. Throat burns like swallowing acid instead of air. You let the distance happen. Accusatory, blaming, making one person responsible for outcome that required two people's participation. But dig deeper. What does letting distance happen actually mean? Does it mean not fighting hard enough? Not pursuing persistently enough? Not refusing to accept boundaries or respect when someone pulls back? Because sometimes what looks like letting distance happen is actually respecting someone's withdrawal, honoring their need for space, refusing to chase someone who's clearly walking away, not forcing closeness on someone who's demonstrated they don't want it, and framing that as failure to fight, as allowing distance, as being responsible for disconnection. That's manipulative. That's blaming someone for respecting your boundaries while simultaneously resenting them for not violating those boundaries to prove they care. Can't have it both. Can't pull away and blame them for not chasing. Can't create distance and accuse them of allowing it. Can't test their commitment by leaving and be angry when they respect your leaving. Either you wanted space or you wanted pursuit. but wanting both simultaneously, wanting someone to respect your boundaries and ignore them, wanting distance and blaming them for not preventing it. That's unfair. That's impossible. That's setting someone up to fail regardless of what they choose. Stomach churning like it's trying to digest stones. You didn't fight for us. Fight how? Fight against what? Fight with what weapons? What strategies? What outcomes that would have counted as sufficient fighting? Because fighting for a relationship when one person is checked out, done, finished, that's not romantic. That's not proof of love. That's disrespecting someone's clearly stated needs. That's refusing to accept when someone tells you through words or actions that they don't want what you're offering. And demanding someone fight for us when you're the one creating distance, testing commitment, pulling away to see if they'll chase. That's not wanting fight, that's wanting proof. Wanting validation, wanting their distress at losing you to soothe your insecurity about whether they truly value you. But people aren't supposed to prove love through suffering your withdrawal, through chasing when you pull away, through fighting for connection. You're actively sabotaging. That's not love. That's game playing. And games destroy more relationships than distance ever could. Knuckles white from gripping, nothing like hands, forgot how to relax. I need you to come back to me. Okay? Why? Why do you need that specifically? What would their return provide that you can't provide yourself? What would their presence give you that their absence reveals you lack internally? Because if the answer is validation, completion, worth, value, proof you matter, those are internal needs. Those are voids only you can fill. And putting responsibility for filling them on someone else's return, that's not fair to them. That's not sustainable, even if they do come back. Because what happens when they inevitably disappoint you again? When their return doesn't actually fill what you're hoping it fills? When having them back reveals that the hole, the need, the incompleteness, it wasn't about their absence at all, but about something you haven't addressed within yourself, then you're back here, blaming them, needing them, demanding they fix what's broken in ways they can't fix because it's not theirs to fix. And that cycle, that pattern of needing external return to solve internal lack, it doesn't end well, doesn't create healthy connection, doesn't build sustainable relationship. It just creates dependency, resentment, exhaustion on both sides. Lungs feel compressed like breathing became optional and body forgot to insist. Let's flip this entirely. What if they did fight? What if they pursued, chased, refused to accept distance, violated boundaries to prove they cared? What if they did exactly what "you didn't fight for us" implies they should have done? Would that have worked? Would that have created closeness? Would that have solved whatever was broken? Or would it have felt suffocating, invasive, disrespectful of clearly stated needs? Would it have made you pull back harder, create more distance, resent the pressure? Because often when people say "you didn't fight for us," what they mean is you didn't fight in the exact way I needed you to fight, at the exact moment I needed you to fight it, with the exact intensity I required to feel secure. But they couldn't have known that, couldn't have read your mind, couldn't have understood the precise formula that would have counted as sufficient fighting when you never articulated what fighting needed to look like. And blaming them for not fighting correctly when you never communicated what correct fighting was, that's unfair. That's expecting mind reading. That's punishing someone for failing tests they didn't know they were taking with criteria they couldn't have known. Shoulders feel like they're being pulled downward by invisible weights. Come back to me, to you, to your space, to your needs, to your version of relationship, to what you want, how you want it, when you want it. But what about them? What about what they need? What about their version of healthy relationship? What about whether coming back serves their growth, their healing, their evolution? Because relationships aren't just about what one person needs, aren't just about one person's desire for return, for closeness, for things to be how they were or how they imagine they could be. Relationships require two people's needs to align, two people's versions of healthy to overlap, two people's choices to coincide. And if their choice is to not come back, if their need is for continued distance, if their version of healthy doesn't include return, your need doesn't override that. Your want doesn't negate their choice. Your I need you to come back doesn't create their obligation to return. It just creates your pain, your disappointment, your experience of loss, all of which are valid, all of which deserve to be felt, but none of which make their return necessary or right or owed. Jaw aches from holding tension I didn't consciously create. Distance happened, not because one person let it, not because one person didn't fight hard enough, but because two people created it through choices, through patterns, through ways of relating that weren't working. And blaming one person for distance, accusing them of allowing it, demanding they undo it by coming back, that doesn't address what created distance in first place, doesn't heal what was broken, doesn't change patterns that made closeness unsustainable. It just creates dynamic where one person is bad guy who failed to prevent distance and other person is victim who wanted closeness but was abandoned, where one person carries blame and other person carries none. And from that dynamic, from that uneven distribution of responsibility, no healthy relationship can be built, no genuine closeness can exist, no sustainable connection can form, because it's not true, it's not accurate. It's revision that makes one person feel better about painful situation by making other person responsible for all of it. And starting from lie, from distorted history, from unfair blame assignment, that's not foundation for return. That's not basis for healthy reconnection. That's set up for same patterns, same disconnections, same distance to happen again. Chest feels empty, like something vital was removed and nobody mentioned it. I need you to come back to me. What if the answer is no? What if they don't come back? What if they choose continued distance, maintained boundaries, life separate from yours? Then what? How do you move through that? How do you process that loss while also examining your role in creating distance? You're blaming them for allowing, because that's the work, not convincing them to return, not making case for why they should fight for us, but looking honestly at how you contributed to distance, how you tested through withdrawal, how you created situations where fighting felt futile or disrespectful, and doing that work alone without their return as reward, without their acknowledgement as validation, just doing it because it's yours to do, regardless of whether they ever come back. That's the hard part. That's what most people avoid by staying focused on what other person did wrong, didn't do enough of, should have done differently. But avoidance doesn't heal. Blame doesn't create growth. Demanding someone's return doesn't address internal work that needs doing, whether they return or not. And until that work is done, until you can see clearly your role in distance you're blaming them for, until you can need them less and choose yourself more, their return wouldn't help anyway. Would just recreate same patterns, same disconnections, same distance, just with different details, hands trembling like they're trying to hold on to something that's already gone. So no, I won't confirm they're coming back. Won't validate blame placed on them for distance two people created. Won't encourage belief that your needing them creates their obligation to return. Instead, I'll say this: distance happened. You both participated in creating it, even if you don't want to see your participation. Blame is rarely accurate, never helpful, always distortion of more complex reality. And whether they come back or don't, whether they fought hard enough or didn't, whether your need for their return gets met or remains unfulfilled, you have work to do, internal work, pattern work, examining how you contribute to dynamics you claim to be victim of. Do that work, not to get them back, not to prove you've changed so they should return, but because it's yours to do, because patterns repeat until they're seen clearly, because needing someone to come back to you keeps you from coming back to yourself, and coming back to yourself, reclaiming parts you outsource to their presence, becoming whole without needing their return to feel complete. That's the real work. That's what actually transforms. That's what creates possibility for healthy connection, whether with them or someone else or yourself. Start there, with yourself, not with demanding their return, not with blaming them for distance, not with needing them to fix what only you can fix. Just you, your work, your patterns, your responsibility for half of every dynamic you claim to be victim of. That's where real change happens. That's where actual healing lives. That's where you stop needing anyone to come back because you've come back to yourself. And from there, from that place of wholeness, whatever happens with them or doesn't happen becomes less desperate, less necessary, less make or break. Just one possibility among many, not the only path to feeling okay again. Truth isn't found in other stories. It's discovered in your own silence. No predictions, just presence. Stay curious, stay awake.